Do you know that feeling when you're on a plane and it hits a big pocket of turbulence and you look over at the flight attendant to see if you should be panicking? And they're not panicking, so you don't. Now imagine you look over and the flight attendant is just as scared as you. I think that's where a lot of us are right now. And not just with one thing, but with lots of different things, and all at the same time. And the question underneath all of it, the one that people are asking in their cars and in the middle of the night and in conversations where they feel like they can finally drop the act, is this. Is anyone in charge? Not who's in charge, but whether anyone is. I'm not talking about conspiracy theories here, because even if that question never passed your lips, I bet you just haven't realized that you have it and what that might mean. This is why this question deserves a real answer. Not a bumper sticker, not a party line, not a just calm down, a real one. And I want to give that to you. But first, I want to tell you something I'll come back to in just a few minutes. But when I was 15 years old, the person I trusted the most to show me how any of this worked, faith, God, the whole thing, blew up in a way that sent me walking away for 9 years. 9 years. And that story is the reason I know that what I'm about to say actually holds. And I'll tell you how it is. So hang with me. So let's do this. Let's name what this feeling actually is, because I don't think we're honest about it very often. And it's not just stress. Stress is, too much on your plate. This is different than that. This is what happens when the systems and the people that you've been quietly counting on to hold everything together stop looking like they're holding it together. Psychologists actually have a name for this. It's called loss of perceived control. The feeling that outcomes are out of your hands no matter what you do. And when that happens, anxiety doesn't go up a little. It spikes. It spikes hard because your brain is actually built to scan for stability. It looks around for it. It needs to believe that the room is safe before it can do anything else. And right now, the signals that it's been counting on, well, they're just not looking great. And I mean that across the board. Not one person or one party, not one administration, both sides of the aisle. Like, I remember back when the CDC was changing its guidance on masks multiple times during that first year of COVID. And people who trusted them felt misled by them. And people who already didn't trust the CDC felt vindicated. So nobody, not the left nor the right, felt steady during that time. The agency that was supposed to be the calm voice was visibly figuring it out in real time on television in front of everybody. Or take our federal government. Do you know that it hasn't passed a full budget on time in over 25 years? 25 years. Both parties, multiple presidents, Congress after Congress. The most basic function of running a country just doesn't happen anymore. And most people have stopped even being surprised or expecting it. You see, that's what I mean by the flight attendant looking scared. It's not one moment, it's a pattern. And your brain notices patterns. Look, there is a researcher out there. His name is Martin Seligman. And he studies what happens to people when they feel like their outcomes are out of their hands. And he calls it a learned helplessness. And what he found is that it doesn't just make people sad. It makes them go flat, he says. They stop trying and they stop engaging. And that's not weakness on that person's part. That's just flat out biology. That's what happens inside the human being when the signals they rely on for stability go sideways all at once. So if you're carrying that low hum of dread right now, you're not a broken person. Listen to me. You're just a human being responding to a genuinely destabilizing set of signals. But the question you have to answer is, what are you going to do with that? Here's where most people get stuck. And I need you to hear this as clearly as possible, because anxiety hates mystery. It would rather have a bad answer than no answer at all. I mean, when things feel uncertain, your brain doesn't say, hey, that's okay, I'll just wait for clarity. Does it? No, it says, give me something to hold. And the thing is that our brain will take almost anything to fill that gap. A story, a villain, a side to be on. Anything that turns I don't know into I know exactly who to blame. And that's why fear spreads so fast right now. It's not because people are dumb. It's because their brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Find a pattern, find a cause, find something that makes uncertainty feel manageable. And most of what gets handed to us as the answer to all of this isn't an answer. It's a recruiting pitch. It's a sales pitch. They're telling you, here's who's responsible. Here's what side to be on. Join us and the anxiety will go away. And it doesn't go away. It just gets the team jersey of whatever team got to your brain first. A guy did an entire episode on exactly this, on how tribal drift works and why you can't see it from the inside. The link, I'll put it in the description below. You can check it out if you want to, but the short version is this. You don't reason your way into a tribe. You get handed a jersey because you were in the room and the anxiety you had needed somewhere to land. It has so much less to do with an actual cognitive thought of what's right, what's wrong, who's on this side, who's on that side. It ends up your team around you, the people who are on those teams, just hand you a jersey and it feels like, well, what you need. But then there's the other direction. Those people who say, I can see through this recruiting pitch and I don't join any side. I'm kind of in the middle. They call themselves realists. They say that they've just seen enough to know how this game works. They wear it like a badge, in fact. And people that I know that do this say it's wisdom. It isn't. I promise you that. Look, cynicism or, a deep distrust sounds like wisdom. And that's the disguise. They say, I've just seen enough. I've stopped being naive. And look, there is a small sliver of that which is actually earned discernment. Being able to see behind the mask. But most of what gets called discernment these days is just disappointment that gave up. Here's how you tell the difference. Discernment can still be surprised by good. But cynicism, it can't. Discernment will leave room for things to be redeemed. Cynicism has already decided that they won't be. Cynicism is like bitterness with a college vocabulary. And the spiritual cost of it is truly enormous because the God of Scripture is relentlessly, stubbornly in the business of redeeming things that look unredeemable. I mean, if you've decided that nothing good can come out of this, whatever this is, you are going to be wrong over and over. And you're going to miss it when it happens. And here's the third option. I'm going to agree, or at least tell you up front, that it's harder than either of the other two, but the other ones aren't going to hold. This one will hold. And I am going to beg you to try it because it will set you free. Now, I want to tell you something about myself because, well, it changes the weight of everything I am about to say. Now, I'm a pastor, and though, I don't lead with that in these episodes, I am not trying to hide it in any way, shape, or form either. But I realize that when some of you hear the word pastor, something tightens up in you. That's fair, because I have some of that history myself. And I mean that in the most specific, personal way possible. Look, when I was 15, there was a girl. Her name was Amanda, and I had it bad. Amanda went to church every single Wednesday night for her youth group in this small Baptist church she attended. Now, at the time, I wasn't a church person. I had my reasons, but I certainly was very much an Amanda person. So I wasn't dumb. I did math. And if I wanted to spend time with her, I was going to be showing up on Wednesday nights to youth group. Now, the youth pastor, I learned his name was Andy, got to know him. It wasn't a really big youth group. There was maybe about a dozen of us. And he seemed honestly really great. He seemed warm and funny. And he took an interest in me, which I thought was pretty cool. And when you're 15 and a grown man who, seems to have it together actually sees you, that kind of means something to you. And over time, and us getting to know each other, he asked me if I knew what a mentor was and asked if he could mentor me. He said the goal, of course, would be to help me to get closer to God, my relationship with God. And so I said, well, okay. I was kind of starting to connect with some of this stuff. And he told me, over time, and as we got together in the first few weeks, he said, I really needed to stop pursuing the girl thing. And of course, I was into Amanda, so that meant not pursuing Amanda. And his reasoning was that girls would get in the way of my relationship with God. So focus first on God. And made sense to me. I think there was some truth to that instruction he gave me. So I did it. I liked her. I really, really liked her, and I backed off. And then a few weeks later, it was Wednesday night. We came to church, and Andy wasn't there. The senior pastor I'd never met before, he showed up. And he told us that Andy would no longer be our youth pastor. He didn't tell us why, but it came out fast. Andy had been having an affair with a girl in the youth group. Amanda. A 15-year-old girl in the youth group. The girl that, of course, he told me to stay away from. And I remember the feeling. Not just anger, though there was plenty of that. It was the very specific gut punch feeling of realizing that the person that I had been watching for these signals of goodness and signals of growth spiritually, the person I had been looking at to know whether things were okay, had been the problem the whole time. He wasn't steering. He was performing steering while the plane was going down. And I walked away not only from church that day, but I walked away from God. And I didn't walk back for 9 years. I told myself that the church was full of hypocrites and full of corruption. And I wasn't wrong. It certainly had those things in it. Same as really every institution built by human beings. But what I was really saying was I trusted this floor, and the floor gave way. And I'm not going to do that again. So fast forward. I'm now about 24 years old, married. My wife wants to go to church. So I gave her the speech. It's full of hypocrites, corruption, and I had no interest. And she just kept asking. There's something burning in her, and she just kept asking. And then I get injured. I'm going to spare you all the details, but my hand ended up getting wrapped like a human Q-tip. And I was on enough Vicodin at that time to make me, how should I say it? Significantly more agreeable than usual. And she asked again about going to church, and I said yes. I genuinely can't tell you whether that was the Vicodin or the Holy Spirit. It's probably some of both. And we went to this small group. It was game night for young married couples. I went with every wall up. This was going to be a horrible experience. And these people were just flat out kind to us in a way that surprised me because, I didn't come prepared with a category for that. And a few nights later, this guy from the group, and I kind of connected with him a little bit. He called me up at the house, and he said, "This is back when we had like phones or in our house that we picked up." And I remember what he said to me almost word for word. He said, "I really hate to bother you with this, but my 5-year-old won't go to sleep until she can pray for you. Would that be okay?" No. How? You tell me. How do you say no to that? I did not want her to pray for me. I did not want that. No, I don't want her to pray for me. But I could not figure out how to say no to a 5-year-old who just wants to pray for a stranger's hurt hand. So I said, okay. This little girl gets on the phone and she prays the most simple, unself-conscious prayer that I would feel better. And friends, somewhere in the middle of it, I felt like the Grinch, and my heart grew 3 sizes in about 45 seconds. In that moment, I started my journey back. And I came back after that. Not because of a pastor, not because the institution of church cleaned itself up and earned my trust back. I came back because I encountered something that had nothing to do with any of that. Something that was underneath the institution. Something that was there before Andy and was still there after Andy. And had been patient enough to wait 9 years for me to be willing to feel it. And that's what I mean by the floor underneath the floor. But that experience lines up with something that research continues to find. The people in the world who handle instability the best, across conditions far worse than ours, are not the ones who found the right side to be on. They're the ones who found something underneath the sides, something that didn't move when the external structures moved. Viktor Frankl survived the Nazi concentration camps. He lost almost everything, his family, his home, his work, every external anchor gone. And what he found in the middle of the worst conditions a human being can survive was this. And this is his quote: "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Between what happens to you and how you respond, there is a space. It's a small one, and it takes just a millisecond to pass through. And in that space is where your freedom of choice is. It's where your growth comes from. And that space doesn't shrink when the outside world gets louder. It only gets smaller if you give that space away." Marcus Aurelius was running the Roman Empire while it was starting to crack apart. And he wrote in his own personal journal about the same thing that Frankl would have written 1,800 years later. Focus on what's yours and release what isn't. Psalm 103:19 says, "The Lord has established his throne in heaven, and his kingdom rules over all." Not the throne is in Washington, not wherever the most powerful people currently are. The throne is in heaven, and it is never moved. That's not a comfort slogan. That is a counter-institutional claim. And it's been tested. It's been tested hard across 2,000 years. The church has outlived Rome, the Berlin Wall, the Soviet Union, every system that looked permanent and was not. And not because it had better institutions, but because it had a foundation that none of those things could shake. And for me, the pastor who almost wasn't a pastor because of what one pastor did, that foundation is my faith. It's the floor I found when all other floors gave way. Not through an institution, but through a 5-year-old's prayer on a Tuesday night. There are two kinds of things on your mental load right now. The first kind are the things that actually belong to you. I would call these your relationships or your work, your health, even the people in your immediate life who need you present. Not the 2 a.m. scrolling version of you, the actual you. Those things are yours. They're real. They need your attention today. But the second kind, which is everything else, the decisions being made in rooms that you're not in, the behavior of leaders that you didn't choose, the trajectory of whatever that institution is, the outcome of conflicts that you didn't start, those are a concern. And they are not your responsibility. And when you treat concern as responsibility, you carry a weight that was never assigned to you. You're not designed to hold the emotional weight of the entire world in real time. And that's not personal failure. That's just being human. Your brain is built for more of a neighborhood, not a live feed of every broken thing on planet Earth refreshed every 4 minutes. Look, here's what I want you to walk away with. That flight attendant that you've been looking at to know whether to panic or not, well, they were never the one keeping the plane in the air. They're just the most visible person in your line of sight, the most visible person in the cabin. The thing keeping the plane up was never them. And that is true of Andy. And that's true of the CDC and of Congress and of every other institution that you have been watching for signals. The stability you're looking for was never located there. It never was. And what I found through 9 years of walking away and a 5-year-old's prayer on a Tuesday night was something underneath all of it. Something that doesn't move when the institutions move. Something that was patient enough to wait for me. Like, I am not asking you to believe what I believe. I'm trying to tell you that what I found on the other side of the exact same question you're carrying right now is real. Don't outsource your peace to people and places and groups that you can't control. Don't live like panic is your pastor. Philippians 4:6 says, don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. And then it says something I want you to catch. It says, God's peace will guard your heart and mind. Guard. That's not a passive word. Peace doesn't just arrive. It stands watch. It keeps things out that would pull you back under. That's not the peace you get from the right party winning. It's not the peace you get from institutions behaving. It's the peace that comes from knowing at the deepest of our level what is yours to hold and who is holding everything else. So here's a practical thing I'd love to have you do this week. Write this thing down. Two lists side by side. List 1 is what is genuinely yours to steward right now. What is yours to hang on to? Your relationships, your work, the people in your life. The choices that you make today. Write it on one side. And then on list 2, write down what have you been carrying that was never yours to carry. The news cycle, the institutions, the outcomes that you can't change from where you're sitting. Then let the second list go. Cut it off, tear it up, burn it. Not because it doesn't matter, because actually the things on that list do matter, but because you're not the one holding it. You see, something else holds that. And based on everything the evidence continues to point at, from Frankl to Marcus Aurelius to a psalm written by people whose entire world had collapsed, that something is steadier than anything currently on your newsfeed. And if you want to know how to find that peace, message me. I'll introduce you. But carry what is yours and release what isn't. Think clearly and live faithfully. There are hard things all around us. And the question isn't, will it get to me? But what will I become because of it? Let's navigate this together with grace and grit and come out hopeful. Grace, grit. I'll see you on the next one.